right, so we will record this. Okay, hang on 1 minute. So how are you doing?
Great. Did my first match for my team last weekend, and my doubles partner was really interested in all this training. I have the book, so I gave her the book tomorrow, and we crushed our opponents.
I love hearing that.
Had a really good time doing it. Yeah, it was super effective, and we haven't played together since, we played together like twice last year. We haven't played together in a year, and yeah, and people were commenting on how well we moved together and communicated, and so no, it was
oh, nice.
Really validated the program.
Cool. Well, and it's so helpful when you have somebody who's kind of willing to go along with it, with you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Certainly pays off. Cool. All right. Well, let me get this running, and I'm just trying to see if. All right. Not that I need to share my screen, but I wanted to see. Why can't I see who's in here?
Yeah, I can never get into this. Whenever I go in, because I favorited the link so I'd be able to do it. But every time I go into the link, it just tells me that the meeting hasn't started yet. And it did that last time too, and I can't remember what I did. I went frantically through every email and found something, and maybe I even took off some of the little things again. I don't remember how I got in last time, but it's like every time it's an adventure.
Huh. Well, I'm trying to, I don't know even why I can't see on my end the chat box. I can see Lynn's in there. Jen, looks like Jennifer. Well, ladies, if you can hear me, it looks like Mitzi, Lynn, Jennifer, if you guys are on, what I would really love for you to do is to call in so that we can chat via phone.
Is there stuff I'm supposed to be looking at, or?
No, I just got into that screen because I wanted to see if I needed to do that in order. That's just my screen, but I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, yeah, because mine's just flashing and.
Yeah, I'm not going to be doing any. It's all just Q&A, so that's why I really wanted everybody to call in.
Then I won't worry about it. Yeah, I apologize. I meant to write and send those things in early, and I've been going nonstop meetings all day, and they're all remote. So it's conference calls from
Same here. I've been like, going all day. All right. Well, I'm gonna shoot. I can't believe I can't see the people in the chat box. That's what's driving me nuts. Let me try one more thing here. Bear with me while I'm.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm so not like being late, but and of course there was a Giants game, so getting out of the meeting was.
Oh yeah.
Oh, but I remained calm and kept my game face on, and that sounds like Lynn laughing at me. Oh, I don't even know what.
No, that was just me laughing.
Okay.
That's my laugh.
All right, let me see now if I can see the.
Hi, Kathy. This is Lynn.
I thought you were on there. Hey.
Yeah, I'm going to listen. I'm going to do the phone because I was getting that feedback.
Oh, just if you want to do that, you can just turn off your speakers.
That's what I just did because I can't handle three voices at once.
It's enough to listen to me.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's okay. But I mean, I want to hear all of you just once, not 3 times.
Yes, reverberating.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to dive in. We can always add more questions. I can now see the chat box if anybody wants to type it there, or we can just you can ask me by phone. But I went through all of the some of the questions that I got and the feedback, and I have put together a little bit that I want to introduce as a way to sort of frame it. And if you have the opportunity where you are right now with a pen and paper, what
the
I want you to
old-fashioned way.
Oh, you bet.
Mm-hmm.
I still do that. I want you to draw 3 circles, but one inside the other, almost like a target. So a smaller one, one encircling that, and then another one.
Like a bullseye?
Like a bullseye, yep.
Okay. Am I supposed to be able to see you on my screen?
No, we're just going to talk.
Okay.
And what I want to introduce and talk about, because a lot of the questions, a lot of the scenarios that I got feedback on, it's really interesting because it completely tailors why I am teaching things the way I'm teaching it. Because the absolute number one thing that I believe in is that each of us as individuals have to get, learn, embody our own game face routine and have that nailed. Because so much of what came up was really having to do with other people and their impact on us, and whether that's an opponent, another captain, whether it's your own doubles partner. It's fascinating because everything was about, well, what do I do if so-and-so or if this happens? And why I had you draw the 3 circles is on the outer circle, I want you to label it your circle of concern. So the very outer circle, you just write the word concern in there. And then the next circle in, I want you to label it influence. And the bullseye, I want you to label it control.
Tiny little area we can control.
Yeah, and you'll see as we go through these things, I'll read some of the questions and all of that. I want you to kind of have that frame in your mind. And where does this stuff fall when we're talking about it? Is it in our circle of concern? Is it in our circle of influence? Do we have any influence over it all? And then ultimately, yes, can we get into our circle of control? That's really what we want to manage, and that's why I taught your game face routine first and how important and almost impenetrable that needs to be, because there's so much stuff that can come at us in a match that we have to kind of stay in that bubble, that little circle if possible. So to start with, I want to read a couple of these. So how do you get a partner or a team to play as pairs without being exposed to your game face program, which is a question I hear a lot. And I think there's a number of things. One is, and I'll always come back to this, but the absolute thing is to model it. Whether they've heard about it or not, if you really do your thing, you really do your game face routine, as somebody was mentioned to me earlier, is that people will notice. They will notice a difference. And generally you play better and they will notice that. So just like we try to, it's so funny, just like we try to do for our kids, we've got to model the behavior that we want them to emulate. It's the same type of deal here. So number one is to model it. Number two is to talk about it and just say, hey, I've been learning this or studying this or found out about this and would like to share it with you, introduce it to them, possibly share the book or an article or a video so that they can get hopefully their own aha moment. So away from the court is definitely to introduce it, talk about it, share it. When you're on the court, absolutely model it and like I say, be it. Be that best player between points that you can, regardless of what's happening around you. And yes, I know, easier said than done. But that's, when you think about it, you think about the players or athletes at the highest level. And can you imagine playing on center court and all those people and cameras and, you know, they create in some ways their own bubble to keep all that stuff outside of them and stay there. So that we need to work on creating our own bubble. The second one, which is a fascinating question, was how do you engage with a partner who does not want to talk or plan? They just want silence.
Here we are.
I'm like, oh, nice.
They just want what? I'm sorry?
Silence. Silence.
Oh, okay.
No talking, no nothing. Well, first, I'm very curious as to what level that is. So that would be one of my first questions that came up for me is what level are we talking about? Probably sounds a little bit more like a 3-0. Rarely do I see that at a 4-0 or 4-5.
Actually, this gal was a 4-0 and got bumped down to 3-5.
Well, now we know.
No.
And now we know why, but that's...
I mean, exactly. I've never seen at that higher level and moving up where that's the, I mean, that's just, it's just impossible. You can't perform that way. So I think if I ran into that, as much as you could to discuss it ahead of time and find out if there's some compromise that can be reached if possible. I mean, what's the minimum that we might be able to agree to? And at minimum, I mean, if you think about the 25 seconds, you think about the 4 steps, really there's only a few seconds of chatting when you're at the get ready, like at least where are we going to serve, what are we trying to do on this point, what's working. I mean, ideally at minimum. You don't have to chat as you're walking and recovering or doing any of that, but could we at least share a few words in terms of strategy right before we start the point? Or at least, can I tell you where I'm going to serve, that kind of thing. If you've got somebody who's like, okay, no, absolutely not, the only thing that you can do is to do your 4 R's no matter what. Be you no matter what. And fascinating, I just came back. I was in the city doing a Positive Coaching Alliance talk at the Hamlin School. So it was all young girls, 7th and 8th graders. And we started talking about team and team chemistry. And some of you have heard me say that it really is chemistry. And here's how I explained it to the gal. So if you've traveled in the last year and a half, 2 years by plane, you've probably gone through the new scanners, you know, not the old ones that kind of beep if the metal goes off, but the ones where you stand in there, you put your hands over your head, and they do the whole scan, right? Well, when those originally came out, there was a story in the paper. It was fascinating. First, there was this big thing about, well, people were worried, like, well, what are you actually going to be able to see? It could be embarrassing. And when it was at the highest level, what they found, I saw some of the pictures and people were talking about it, and I guess we're all Bay Area, or most of us are, but it's like you could see sort of this cloud around people. And, of course, the woo-woos here in Berkeley were, oh, look, you can see their aura. But what the machine was picking up was really, because we, at all times, if you're alive, you are emitting energy from your body, you know, heat energy and emotional energy, and it all, we just can't see it with the naked eye. But what these machines were doing was able to kind of pick up on that energy in a certain spectrum that it could actually register it. So when you think about team, and this is a huge point, is that at all times, you know, we are emanating energy from our body. And think about the players that you really like to play with and the ones that you really want to be around. It's sort of infectious. I mean, they put off a good vibe and good energy. And it's really true that they do. So team chemistry, when there is chemistry between two players, it's real. So my whole point in a lot of this is, number one, you've got to do whatever you can do to protect your own energy field and what's emanating from you, and not to let anybody, you know, change that or take that away. And the idea is to do it so strongly that it impacts, infectious in a good way, those around you, because that's what we feel when we're around people who we really enjoy. So trying to tie all these themes together where you have your, circle of control, your bubble, your waves of energy. Even if you're around the most cranky person, what we tend to do, unfortunately, is we let them dictate our energy. And we have to have our energy emanating at a high level from our, feelings of positive, challenge, focused, all of that, and not let anything deflate us. Again, easier said than done. But that's, I think, a tool there. If you end up with somebody that's just like that, you know what? So what? You just go about your business. You do your energy. You do everything the way that you normally would. And hopefully it will infect them in a positive way. And at the very least, it's not going to drain you. Okay. The next one, it says, neutralize a partner or egos in order to play a competitive match. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I brought it back to the same thing. If, again, fear has its own particular energy, as does ego. And, people don't even have to say anything. They can just be in their ego, and it, negatively impacts us. So I think the overarching thing is to not get hooked by them. Know yourself, know your routine, know your energy level, know everything that you need to do to be optimal on the court, and not let another person change that or impact that. So if that was, Mitzi, if you're on, if that was
Yep.
your question, did I get that right? I'm not sure I understood exactly what it was.
Part of it actually was I thought of two different people and put them together in one statement. Sometimes what I'm starting to finally figure out is some with inflated egos do that so that they hide their fear.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I saw that as, cause and effect in essence.
Yeah, and the more you can just be that great teammate, no matter what, the more that will calm them down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, and it's a fascinating thing between.
I'm sorry, this is Lynn.
Yeah.
Mitzi, can you be more specific?
I've co-captained a couple of teams in the last year or so, and I'm having to kind of look back or look at player pairs, and as that co-captain, have had to play with people that no one else would play with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Once more into the fray. And I finally figured out in a number of cases that blustery person is blustery because of fear. They're letting their egos do the talking instead of their sticks.
Right. It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
against
it's
their
all
fear.
defensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I try and do with people like that, and maybe I understand them because, I not so much now, but I have been like that. It's, you're very invested in doing well. You've worked hard. You've busted on the ball machine. Now you want to come out and you want to, kick butt. You want to do great. You go after the first shot, second serve, and you crush it, and it goes 15 feet wide, and you're just like, oh crap. And then you're all, embarrassed and self-conscious, and then you're all in your head. And so I don't do that anymore, but what I do with a partner who I see kind of climbing in her head like that is when we get out there, I just say, you have permission to go after any shot you want. Swing away. Don't worry if you miss. I don't care. just call it and go for it. And almost every one of them just relaxes.
Mhm.
And that's at least what the way it works for people, my partners I have that I see that happening to.
That's great because it does allow them early on to kind of let that energy that they come onto the court with. Nervous energy can kind of be that, a little high-strung, and they got to move, and of course there's not going to be the level of control that's usually there. So if they have permission to go for it, it can dissipate some of that shaky energy and let them.
Yeah, eventually the things start going in.
Yeah.
But if they get all tentative and then start beating themselves up, and I'm not such a great player, so it helps me if I can get my partner to play better because I'm not the most athletic person on earth.
Cool.
Thank
All right.
you. This is Lynn. Thank you. That was very helpful, just a clarification of what you were talking about.
Okay.
The next one, overcoming our favorite topic, gamesmanship, which causes my partner to check out or quit mentally. Whew, okay. Let me see how this feels to you, Wayne. I really think that when gamesmanship is up, the best thing to be able to do is to keep your attention and your partner's attention on you, on the two of you, and on your team, and to make sure that we are connecting between points, that there is a plan, and keeping the energy and the environment on your side of the court so positive and upbeat that they're not going to be distracted by the other side. And that's really what, when you think about ritual and you think about routines and why they work, it is the stimulus, the trigger, the stimulus response piece. And the other thing that they do is they help us keep ourselves focused on what's important. So if you've got these 4 steps and we're going to work on our reaction, we're going to move together as a team as we're recovering, we're going to meet back here, and we're going to do all this, and I got to get in my position, you kind of have that. There's no room to really be distracted by the other. And then I think the same thing is when somebody's doing that or making calls, it's like to deal with it in that first, giving yourself that 3-second window to respond and then to let it go. Where we get into trouble is when we let it linger and let it fester and get into our heads and take us out. And people do that on purpose because they know it works. So the more you can, and that's why, to me, I personally love doubles, is I love having that other person where I can ignore what's happening over there and connect and keep myself focused on my routine on our side of the court and ignore what's happening, on the other. And the other thing that I came up with in thinking about this is that it's, I don't know if some of you saw the newsletter that I put out the other day when I saw I dropped my car off, and the really nice guy that was helping me in the service, kind of one of the comments he made is that he said, "Happy wife, happy life." Oh, I've never heard that before. And guys, they just keep it simple, and they pretty much, especially around competition they don't take things personally. They just, whatever, let it roll off their back and they go. And I think for us as women, when we step out onto the court and there are nerves, it's not personal. And then I had to really think about, for myself, okay, and when I also talk to parents around youth sports, it's like, well, if you really thought about it, what is personal to you? If you're out on the court, what's really big enough, egregious enough on the court for me to allow myself to get hooked by somebody else? To give up my power, to be distracted, to let them get under my skin. Is there really, and I think all of us need to think about that. People are going to try all sorts of stuff. I mean, they just do, and I don't know that we're ever going to eliminate it. But for me, what is it in life that's big enough for me to either lose my stuff over or be out of integrity with myself on how I'm trying to be, or get hooked by somebody, or go into upset. And it was hard for me to come up with something. I think the thing that always comes up for me is my kids. Like, okay, if anybody attacks my kids or does something like that, okay, you're going to see Mama Bear come out with all sorts of stuff. But on the tennis court, is there really anything that I would, and I couldn't really come up with anything unless I happened to be playing with one of my kids and somebody tried to hit him or something.
How about somebody repeatedly aiming at your partner's head?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that I would respond, but how would I lose it? Would I let them get under my skin, take me out of my game? No. I might say something. Now, this is just me. This is me. If it was happening in college tennis and somebody kept doing that, I would say, okay, you have permission. Next ball, go right at her. And do it once to send a message. I wouldn't go at her head, but I would go at her body and to send a message. Now, part of the game, sometimes the best spot to go is at the person. Now, never at the head or at the face. If they're continuing to do it and I've said something, I'm competitive enough that I would want to win. I don't think I would walk off the court. But I would definitely probably do a strategy where, okay, let's go 2 back until we're really in a position to come in and be aggressive. I may also want us to both stay back a little bit on the service line and play a little bit more first ball setup shots until we get the opportunity to close and put the ball away, ideally to one of the strategic targets, which for me are the 3 T's, like the center T, where the service line hits the center line or the service line hits on the outside, the double side line. So I would probably but I would do everything possible to to stay calm in the moment, strategic, and not let it get under my skin. I'm not sure if that was helpful at all in that.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
Okay. So I think for all of us personally, and one of the things with this Game Face program, and we were talking about the 4 R's, and then as we get into these other things, we're going to be talking about the things that help us have our 4 R's show up on demand, whether we need, anytime we need it. We do need to be kind of that prepared to walk on the court and be able to deal with all this other stuff that can happen. I mean, sometimes we're playing more than just a game of tennis and hitting the ball. We're playing all these other emotional, mental games. And so we really have to be in the best shape possible to handle it and to be able to stay as that calm, cool, collected cucumber on the court when stuff starts to come up. And that's, to me, why I love this system, is it really helps us prepare to handle that. I think the other thing is to, much like I would have talked to the players on my team, to know who we are, who we stand for, and think about some of these situations and beforehand, and how would we handle it? Sort of what's our backboard, our values, what do we want to be known for, and how are we going to handle things? And the more we can think about these things ahead of time and kind of have that game plan that's in alignment and in integrity for us, the easier when we step out onto the court. Now, Mitzi, you had another one in here that was fascinating. It was your very last one. How do you overcome partner bad behavior during a match? And such as partner makes an obvious bad line call, and I have to reverse it, and then the partner's hostility goes from the opponents to me. This was a good one. This really made me stop and think. And what I came up with is that I don't think I would ever reverse a partner's call in the moment unless she asked for help on the call. If she was sure, and I wasn't, or even if it was her call, it was on her side, and she made the out call, even if I thought it was wrong, I wouldn't say anything unless she asked for help.
Really?
Well, I had to think about it. I mean, a lot. One, it's so incredibly hard to call lines. I mean, it's tennis. I mean, think about it. I mean, I just explained this to these girls that I was talking to. You know, in tennis, in professional tennis, there's a linesman on every line whose sole job is to stand there, squat down, and stare at that line. Not to watch the point, not to do anything, but from a complete standstill, watch that line. And now we have challenges, and we have Hawkeye, right? And it has taken from the human eye standing still, staring at a line, still getting it wrong, to having an electronic system of a camera above hand, being able to zoom in and look at that thing and make a difference between, you know, a hair here or a hair, literally a hair on the ball here or there.
It depends on the partner. I mean, if it's like your longtime partner and you know that she makes calls in good faith, then I would say, yeah, absolutely, you don't reverse her out there. But occasionally I've had a partner who everybody knows makes horrible calls. If it's close, she always calls it out, and I never wanted to reverse her or go against her, and my coach said, just call it in really fast. That was her solution. So that the bad caller, before she even gets a chance to put her finger up, I've already said, oh, good shot, you got me, you know.
Well, that's a great idea, and I think especially if it's a ball that's, you know, on your side.
Yeah.
But if it's a
not
line
if
that
you're not really, not if you don't know, but I mean,
right.
This particular person is just so notorious, and it's, and
yeah.
I'm sure
I think it's a really good idea, especially if it's on your side. You know, I mean, if it's on a line that's closest to you,
yeah,
then yes, I would. That's a way to resolve it and say, no, that was my call, good shot. You know, do it immediately. What do you guys think about if it's on her side? I mean, I just find that.
Are you talking about in the point, on the court in the point, or
on
are you
the
talking
court
about
during
a
a
serve?
point? We're playing doubles.
And you're on the opposite side of the court than she's on.
Yeah, but you still think it wasn't. You know, I think, oh.
Well, in that case, I would think about that, and I'd see if there's a pattern, because you know, I don't know if I've ever had that happen with that person before. I would agree I'd have to wait, but I've experienced where my partner's receiving, and I'm her partner. I'm standing right there. I'm supposed to help her with that call, that serve, and it was clearly out. Or whatever it was, she called
it in, and she called it out. Yeah.
Right, and it wasn't, and I reversed it because my
and
understanding
that is your job.
Okay, and boy, I was told, don't you ever do that again. Excuse me.
Well, then in that situation, I said that's my job. You know,
it is.
With receiver's partner's
and it
job.
was closer to me. It was closer to me. It was inside.
Yeah, if you've got the angle, it's your call.
Yes. So I think my trepidation was if she's closest, I wouldn't, but I would say, I may say something on the changeover. I mean, I wouldn't want to embarrass her in the middle of the point, but I might say on a changeover, that I'm going to, whatever, like if it's on my side, I'm going to call it. If I disagree, I might say something, but that whole thought of just overruling her in the middle of a point was like, wow, would I do that?
Where she was closest to it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then if not, then you're right. It's like you said, Lynn, if I'm receiver's partner, hey, I just say, excuse me, but that's my job. I'm not here. That's my number one job. Unless it's the far, you know, especially if it's the service line, but if it's the far sideline, I got to give it up to her. But if it's the center line or the service line, that's your job. So.
And so then what if you do actually keep your mouth shut, but you're watching really closely and you do see a pattern over and over again?
I think the best thing to say is to do it more on a changeover.
To her, just between us.
Just between us, and
right.
say, you know, I just have to tell you, I think some of them, and I'm gonna chime in on some of these calls. That if I really see it clearly, I'm gonna chime in. And then you know, if there's a disagreement, it always goes to the person who called it in, not the person who called it out.
Right. Right.
So but that's what I mean. And take that stance and be firm, but but do our best to not embarrass her in the middle of a point.
Right.
Or the middle
because
of the game.
We're trying to keep that internal circle of control. We're trying to be us against the world.
Yes, and ideally, I mean, build it so well that the energy emanating from our circle is inviting that our partner wants to be in it. But of course, we're in these league things. You're always going to end up with people like who you don't necessarily want to play with, or nobody else wants to play with. So it will happen. Two other things I wanted to introduce you to in these things, which I just think is so much fun. It's kind of out of the mouths of babes. I have my little first grader they're learning the ruler and how to regulate emotions, and they're given all these tools. And so one of them is the breathing tool. So you need to imagine Alex, who's 7 now. You know, so Mama might, even when I'm rushing around or trying to get here or I'm getting upset, and little Alex will come and put his hand on his chest and say, okay, Mama, you need to use your breathing tool. So they've been trained when they start to get upset or frustrated or whatever, to kind of put their hand on their chest and just take a deep breath. And I love the fact that they're learning this at 6 and 7. But, you know, the breathing tool is something that we always have with us. And to use that anytime we start to feel it coming up. And the breathing tool can help us stay in our own bubble, if you will, within our own circle. Because oftentimes when we start to step out that circle and get upset, one of the first things that go is our breathing. And we tend to breathe short and shallow and get tense. And so one of the things that can help us stay in there is to use that breathing tool. The other tool that they learn is called the garbage can tool. So when we end up with stuff that people are throwing garbage and trash our way, or saying things that we just like, whoa, where did that come from? I don't really want to keep that with me. And sometimes it's just making a little, you know, gesture with your hand, like, okay, poof, I'm going to dump that right into the garbage can. And it kind of that letting go, like breathing out, watching a hand motion. Okay, I'm just tossing that in the trash can. Boom, letting it go.
What? Give an example of what you'd let go.
Oh gosh,
somebody
anything.
Called you a sissy?
Well, on the tennis court, one of the things I hear a lot is somebody's trying to coach you, you know, or give you advice.
Okay.
What you should do, or someone says, "Are you, you know, are you sure?"
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I can't even believe that there's a company called Are You Sure, and they make T-shirts or whatever.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? It's one of the worst lines in the world. Don't make a company out of it. But you say, yes, I am sure, and then, but you can feel your blood pressure rising, and you just sort of take their comment and poof, okay, I'm throwing that in the garbage.
You're talking about an opponent saying, "Are you sure?"
Yes.
Okay. Because it's really awful if your partner is.
Yeah. But all those little things, or, you know, looks, or hitting a ball too close to you, or any of those kind of things that can just start to get your blood pressure up. And so trying to give you a couple other tools that can help you maintain the bubble that you can work on your 4 R's in. Like, okay, yep, that's just one for the garbage can. Ding! And the breathing tool. So those were, so Mitzi, is that helpful in going through the things that you sent in?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Kathy, this is Lynn. Are your kids going to a private school?
Yeah, they go to an independent school, yes.
Yeah, well, those are wonderful tools they're learning because we all need to just stop and breathe now and then.
Absolutely.
Just breathe. Just breathe.
Just breathe. Yep. So I've got a couple other questions that were sent in. So the one was asking for tips for when people are watching, and that makes me nervous, especially when they're cheering for the other team. And for this gal, for Beth, it's usually she plays singles, so I don't have a buddy on the court. You know, what can I do to do that? And a couple things I think. One is one that I used to do is just imagine they're cheering for you. So just try to change the story. That imagine that they're cheering for you. I think on the court again, coming back to your routine and using that. And even within that routine, focusing on something else, something specific. And what I mean by that, for example, one of the gals, a couple of them did this. Interesting things that they would come up with. So in the 4 R's, we talked about reaction, then we talked about recovery. And recovery being the longest phase, which is probably when things can get under our skin. You know, we've got our first 3 seconds, but maybe the cheering goes on and it's interrupting our kind of recovery phase and we're getting distracted. A couple of gals that I've worked with, one would literally almost like walk the lines to go pick up the ball. So she had done her reaction, maybe she was at the net, and she would walk down the center line of the court and extend that past the baseline, past the center mark, or maybe it was doubles and she was off over on the sidelines. Literally in her recovery, to give herself something to focus on, she would walk on the painted line. Another one did something similar in that in her mind's eye, she would draw a line on the court from where she was standing to where the ball was and walk that as a particular line or a pattern. Or some people walk a particular pattern, like if you're walking together in doubles, straight out past the service line to where the ball is, and then we come back to our sort of magic spot behind. And all of that doesn't change your 4 R's. It's just that there's other distractions out and around you. It gives you something very specific and concrete to focus on, to keep your attention on yourself and on your side of the court. Other things that I've seen people do is that's where also people, while they're in the recovery and walking, they play with their strings, kind of adjust them. Again, that keeps your focus on the strings and away inside your bubble and away from things or comments. I mean, some of these league matches I've been to and some of the comments that I hear from people watching are like, wow, are you kidding me? So you need to figure out other ways to stay in that bubble. And I think those, especially during that recovery phase, and those are a couple techniques. One thing I always used to do is if I had a ball, I also would kind of, in a way, play with the ball on my strings, whether I was bouncing it a little bit, just kind of, anybody remember what a wheelo is? How you could kind of, kind of move the ball around on your, I mean, I would do something like that I'm walking, I'm breathing, I'm recovering, but I had to do something else because it was such a long time span relative to everything else that my mind could start to wander or I could get distracted.
This is Lynn. It's like in prepared childbirth. You can't just tell someone to relax. You have to give them something else to think about.
Absolutely.
And so you had to focus on bouncing the ball on your strings because otherwise you'd miss the ball. And it shuts everything else out. Exactly.
So a couple little tricks just to help you stay in there. And then the other thing that and we're going to dive more into this a little bit later, but off court, I think using visualization, not only as a means of working on your strokes or your tactics, but also seeing yourself in a movie-like situation, visualizing, how would you handle that? Okay, the next time I go out there on the court and they're cheering loudly, maybe they're being obnoxious for their teammate or whatever, how would I like to see myself handle that? And you can use that sort of what-if playing scenario for any of the things we're talking about. when you have a moment in the kind of calm, theoretical setting of your mind, how would you handle that stuff? And it's amazing what you can come up with and then bring that. Okay. Tips for when you're playing. The person you're playing is exuding negative energy and is unpleasant to interact with. Again, a lot of the stuff I mentioned earlier does it, but I think another phrase that I want you to kind of put in your brains is, what you focus on grows. So if you're focusing on the fact that this person is negative and is unpleasant, it just gets bigger and bigger. So keeping your energy and your routine exemplary, as I've mentioned before, and not to get hooked. And again, I don't know why I always bring these stories back to my kids, but we was reading this book the other night called, I think it's called Simon's Hook. And it's a story of this young boy who gets his gum stuck in his hair, and his sister's trying to help him get it out, and of course then the scissors come out, and he ends up with this outrageously ugly haircut. And he goes to play with his friends, and he has a hat on, the hat comes off, and now he's getting relentlessly teased by his buddies, and he gets very upset and he leaves. And on the way home he sees his aunt, and he's all upset. And she talks to him, and she goes into the garage and says, I have a story for you. And she brings out a fishing pole. And it's a story of, she goes, I want you to imagine, it's like being teased is like getting hooked. When you're out there and people are throwing out their line, their hooks of these sayings or things they're doing. And what they're trying to do is hook you and get you into this sort of situation and conversation. So the book is about teaching kids, well, what can you do to avoid getting hooked? And that's really what we're talking about. Somebody's behavior is like that, either ignoring it, changing the subject, walking away, making a joke out of them, or the situation, agreeing with it, all sorts of strategies to basically avoid getting hooked. And I think that's sort of the theme. How do we do that so that we don't give up our power and our focus on the court? In coming back to everything I said, I think if you look at the circles that we drew and thinking about each one of these things that come up, where do they live? And so many of them live in our circle of concern.
Which is way outside.
It's just way out there. And there's really nothing that we can do about it. It's the furthest thing away from us. And I think it's the thing, I think about it when I say, like giving your power away. It's like, yeah, you're letting your power lift away from you, floating out to some outer ring out there. And we want to be protective, and we want to keep it internal and in that bubble. And that's how you have to think about it. So creating, that's why your 4 R's are so important, so imperative. That does create your shield, your bubble. And when things come up, having some of those tools within the bubble, within the 4 R's, to help you stay there. And it just takes thinking about it, preparing for it, practicing it, and in some ways at practice, welcoming things that push your buttons. That's what I call myself as a coach. I call myself, my job is to try to push my players' buttons. And you know what I mean by that. I mean, kind of get under their skin. And because my saying is, those of us that are the strongest, and most successful, whether it's on the court or off, have the fewest buttons, and the ones they have are really hard to find. So my job at practice, my job was to try to create pressure, push buttons, because that's what they're going to run into in a match. And the more we can practice in that situation and practice our response and how we're going to deal with it, the easier it becomes. again, going back to professional athletes and all the things they have to deal with. Well, when they're first there and they're first playing on center court, it's rare that they're successful, but they get used to it. They learn these strategies to create their own bubble and stay in it and not let anything pop their bubble. And the ideal world in the doubles is that and this is what I love to do, is my partner and I are sharing the same bubble, and then it's really fun. So that's what I have for you in terms of responding to some of the questions, but I have plenty of time. If anybody has any other questions or things that have come up in implementing what we've talked about so far, fire away.
Kathy, this is Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go back to the 3 circles?
Sure.
And I can tell what you're saying about me and my partner. You know, we need to be impenetrable to all this stuff that happens. But what's the difference between the outside circle, the circle of concern, and the inner circle, the one of influence? What's the difference in those two?
So the middle circle is influence. So there are some things in life that you may not be able to control, but you might be able to influence. Whereas concern, I'm concerned about it, but I have absolutely no influence, no control whatsoever. So the difference is, okay, so if we're looking at in athletics and doubles or tennis, a lot of the things that we talked about are in the circle of concern. There's no influence, there's no control. Now, influence for me might be playing on the doubles court with somebody that I have played before, or I have a relationship with, and maybe I'm getting upset or she's getting upset. We, because of our relationship, have the opportunity to have influence over.
So you have influence over her, whatever's going on with her, and she has influence over you. But because you are a team, because you're a team.
You're a team, and I might be able to remind her and bring her back and be able to say, yeah, let's get our game face back on here.
Okay.
That I can have some influence, and because I do have a relationship and maybe some permission. But where we want to spend most of our time, our energy, our efforts, our thoughts, is in our circle of control, in that middle thing.
But you get to your circle of control faster with people who aren't even doing the game face, by doing the game face and some of the reaction where you say, right back, no problem.
Yep, absolutely.
That kind of stuff. You bring them into that bubble sooner with those kinds of comments.
Yes. I don't want them pulling you out of your inner circle bubble into that other arena of concern where all that other kind of, excuse the expression, but crap is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I want you staying in. So yes, in the ideal world, and that's why doing this work, I have to tell you a couple things I'm doing this season, this semester, which has been fun, is working with entire teams. And starting, some of you mentioned that you're team captains, and I started with a couple of them with the team captain. And it's some of the work that I'm doing. I think it's really important as a team captain to decide, what kind of team you're going to have, kind of set up some of these things ahead of time. What are the agreements? If that's the level of team that you want to have. And I came in and I taught game face to the entire team. So yeah, now when they do have to go through this changing of the guard in terms of partners, at least that's a constant. Everybody knows what the game face routine is, so no matter who we are, who we're playing with, those things are going to be happening on this team. And it's made the world of difference. This is a 40-plus team, and they just finished number 1. They're doing postseason. It's been incredible. And then we even took it a step further, where in one of my last meetings with them, we decided to work on some what I call doubles conventions. And what I mean by that is, how we not just the 4 R's, but how we do things, and whether that's we lob or return once a game. We are going to poach once a game. I taught them something called go on 2, go on 3, which is when you, like the server stays back and the receiver stays back, and they get into those long, obnoxious cross-court rallies where you want to just fall asleep, right? So there's a strategy called go on 2 or go on 3 that it's like a command poach. And what that means is, let's say, like I'm going to be the receiver because I would never stay back as a server. But let's say I'm the receiver and I'm staying back. Okay, then my partner knows on either the second or the third ball that the opposing player on the opposing baseline hits, she's going to poach no matter what. And then I know I'm on the baseline, I got to cover the other side. So those are just some ideas. But when you put those kind of things in place, like as a team, we do the 4 R's. We know what this means. We, even dividing the court. I mean, who has the middle? Just as simple as, okay, well, this is an agreement. Or do you divide the court left to right or front to back? And what I mean by that is I personally, like on my teams, we divide it front to back. Mm-hmm. So if you're up at net, you have absolute free reign permission to go for any ball that you want.
Yeah.
The person in the back has to adjust. And if the person in the back wants more action or doesn't like that, then you better get your behind up to the net. So as with this, as if you're captains, I mean, putting some of this stuff into place, that's also why I wrote the book. It's also why those stuff is out there. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing this year. It just makes it so much easier. So yes, that is in the ideal world, is to get the team on it, get the doubles team. And at the very least, if the team's not into it, the doubles partner isn't into it, you be into it, and it will help your game and bring their level up as well. Cool. Any other questions? Good stuff.
Kathy, this is Lynn again. At some point, are you going to go through doubles conventions with us?
I wasn't going to, but I certainly can.
On another time?
Nice.
Yeah.
That happens with me sometimes when, they're in that cross-court thing, and it's more likely to happen to me when I'm playing with somebody who's way better than I am, so I'm intimidated about jumping in. And I feel like I'm just getting pinned back into this little corner as the angles get sharper and sharper, and I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, this poor person is there covering the entire court because I'm scared to jump in and screw it up.
It's a great play, and you can do it on either side.
Yeah.
And you just get, if you've played a couple games, and like, all right, every time this person, we're going to get into this cross-court rally, then you just say, all right, I'm going to go on 2 or I'm going to go on 3. And then they know, and it just makes it more fun, it makes it more engaging, it mixes it up.
That would be good, because I actually, thinking about these when we're going through these scenarios, and I'm thinking, no, I don't have a problem with that, no, I don't have a problem with that, no, I don't have a problem. Where I get really, really constricted, though, is when I'm playing up, or when we're playing in combo, and so your partner's a level higher, and then I don't want to, pee on their parade, and so I find myself getting really tentative.
Which is a vicious cycle downwards, right?
Sure it is.
Yeah. So being able to, and that's why I'm saying if you're on a team, I mean, being able to have some of these conversations, or ahead of time, or if they are a level higher, asking them and having permission, or what do you see? Because otherwise we just keep all this stuff in our head and it circles around.
Yeah.
And we get tighter, and then we play terrible, and then the things come to fruition. Though she thinks I suck, I'm like, oh my God, how do you play? So invite and be open and let them know I'm totally open to suggestion and coaching, and I want to learn, I want to get better.
Yeah.
You have permission. It's another way to approach it.
Yeah, that's true. And then if they don't want me jumping in, then okay. Then if they've got to cover the whole thing, then at least I'm not feeling guilty about it.
Right. You've brought it up and say, and you can talk about, here's this play I learned. What do you think? I know this is going to be a cross-court rally. I'm just going to go on the second ball. What do you think?
Yeah.
then it's posed that way. And no harm, no foul. I mean, you just try it once, and at least even if you try it once and do it early, it kind of plants that seed. Oh my gosh, they're not doing that. It's what I call plug and play doubles.
Will you talk more about plug and play and conventions?
You can talk me into anything, Lynn. Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's a huge.
Yeah, that would be because this kind of stuff, when it works, because you're working together on this, makes you feel like you're cheating. It's wonderful. It's fun.
Like you're cheating. No, I'm open. This is your stuff. I'm open, for anything. I want to make sure I get to the game face stuff, but I'm happy. I'll just make a note.
You know what I would really like is I don't know if you can do this, but on one of these, if you could show 2 people on a court on one side of the net, the point just ended, and show them in the different positions where one's the server, one's the server's partner, one's the receiver, one's the receiver's partner. And show this walking back.
Okay.
And whatever they do in the reaction, the recovery, the ready, and the
I've got
ritual.
I've got video.
Show us that with
Sure.
actual human beings.
Okay.
I would love that because I can't come to your camp this summer.
Well, I'll do it again. You'll be able to be there. No worries.
I might have.
All right. Any other questions?
No.
All right.
We're good.
And as I said, always available. I love it. I mean, always available by email. I love this stuff. So you send questions, things come up. I love some of you have written me the success stories. I love that. I mean, as you can tell, I get slightly excited about this stuff.
And you can even learn from your mechanic, right?
I did. I learned from my mechanic, from my 7-year-old.
These are life lessons. These are life lessons you're teaching.
It's all around us.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. All right, ladies.
Okay.
Well, keep
Thank
the
you.
questions, the comments coming. I'm having a great time, and thank you for your patience. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. I will be on time for the rest of the sessions, and best of luck on the courts, and please keep me posted.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
You bet. Good night, everybody.
Bye.